Okay, yes.
You guys, you're gonna be on Facebook in like 10 seconds. Yes. Remember, everything's online.
Yep. Everything's recorded. That's all. Yep. You guys see it?
I'm on Facebook.
Okay. I have already been 8, so I'm gonna leave at 7:45. Sorry about that.
Oh, awesome.
All right, Mr. Speaker. All you.
Can you see it?
We do live.
It's like not.
That's also.
Why isn't it? Because I'm thinking.
Is that good?
Oh, it's like really cool.
10 seconds.
You guys can't see the speakers.
I'm not telling you. This is hilarious. Not gonna be able to tell that.
Oh, you see by seeing something? It's like really laggy.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, see,
If you can see the speakers list, like, and also.
if you guys want to have a cup of coffee in my hand without that screener.
Wait, see, like it's not coming up. Oh, see. All right. Okay, I officially call to order first Senate meeting of fall semester, September 7th, 2021.
All right. Great time to pass things. Senator Batchelor. Okay, we'll get there. Here. Senator Chin. Here. Senator Chuktovich.
Here.
Senator Hathaway. Senator Ola. Senator Moore. Here.
Guys, like
Senator
correct
Sadi.
if you pronounce it wrong.
Senator Sorkin.
Here.
Senator Toshina.
Here.
Senator Suniti.
Here.
Senator Wang. Senator Young.
Okay. All right, we're gonna do that again, and when she says her name, like tell her the real pronunciation. So she knows.
Yeah,
So let's restart
That's
and do it
wrong,
again.
so she gets it correct.
So she knows.
Okay, Senator Batawachi.
Body charging.
Okay, say that again.
Body charging.
Okay. Senator Chin.
Here.
Senator Chuktovich.
So it's Svetlana.
Okay, you're gonna need to say that again.
Why is it J?
It's like, yeah, it's like.
Historic question. Yeah, you should do my job for today. Alright.
No.
Is it too long? No, I don't have it yet, so it's my fifth. Alright. Let her keep going.
Senator Hathaway. Senator Ola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Senator Moore.
Nope.
Senator Sadi.
Here.
Senator Sorkin.
Here.
Senator Torsina.
Toshina.
Senator Sunami.
Juicy.
Sime, okay.
Someone.
That one was smart. Senator Wang. Wong. And then Senator Young. You? Yeah. Okay.
Alright. How many are you there?
All of them.
Well, present guys. Yay. Alright, now you're gonna be graced by my beautiful voice.
We don't say no. Because
You guys can join in with me, so what's the what's the parliamentary inquiry? Should we stand while singing the gins?
We usually do.
We usually do, so let's go.
Yeah.
Alright, guys.
People sing with the speaker. Usually they
You
do.
can sing with me. Don't make it alone. You don't have to.
You got this.
I feel like the only people who should sing right now are Lotus and Matt.
Yeah.
Alright. many fair and famous streams beneath the sun there be. Yet near to us many seems our own dear Tennessee. We love her banks and state, we boast for to our minds they bring. Our dear old alma mater's halls where sweetest memories cling. As flows the river down her course along her steadfast way. May we along life's deepest course grow stronger day by day. May our hearts wherever forever loyal be to our beloved college home beside the Tennessee. Can we have a senator please read the land acknowledgement? One, all right, Senator Moore.
You would stand up order.
You can just, maybe whatever comfortable with.
We would like to acknowledge and respect the son of the nation, known as the Great Hill people and keepers of the Western Door, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers on whose ancestral lands the University of Rochester currently resides in Rochester, New York.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to move into open forum. So, yes, Chief Justice Smith.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce you guys to the deputy chief here, Zane Nichols, administrator. So he'll be around, just thought you all should meet him, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so how we're gonna do this, with in person, if you want to be on the speakers list, raise your hand, I'll put you on. That goes for the gallery too. So is there anyone else who'd like to speak during open forum? All right, seeing none, we can go into discussion on updates, projects, and initiatives. So let's go to campus life. Are you doing campus life?
Yes.
Okay, so you can stay right there, you can come up, whatever, so I know you have a lot of updates, so.
All right, here, hi, Vaughn Rogers. Sorry, I can't remember. To the primary, basically want to update everybody on. So I was already there, specifically the dining. I think Douglas will be open from 11:30 to 11. The pit is for the, basically there are another dining things we will focus on because of going on with dining services. We should a little bit.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm
Sorry.
Please close at 8. The wall grill salad bar closes at 10 o'clock. We're meeting with Cam. Another Cam, we're working with Wesley on publicizing job postings. We all are worried about and concerned. We are aware and worried about the concerns of people resigning and couldn't be let go because of COVID vaccine mandates, as well as the shortage of workers. So we're all aware that we are concerned. We are bringing up to Cam and also dining services and services for them. Review yourself. That's the only thing I want to address.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding the updates? Comments, questions? All right, thank you, Deputy Rogers. We can go into executive updates.
Wait, actually.
Oh,
I thought
yeah,
you mentioned about dining, can I say one thing?
yeah, go ahead, Senator.
We emailed IT as well about the Wi-Fi stuff. They said they're working on changing it and upgrading it this year, and then that fell through and wasn't working with Thursday classes, so I think it's going to be set up within the week or so.
Can you say that again a little bit louder, so?
Oh, sorry, they said like everyone probably knows the Wi-Fi issue, so hoping to meet with someone in charge of IT within a week or so to hopefully improve the IT things and Wi-Fi.
Okay, cool, thanks.
We're all good. Matt.
Yep.
So I'm hearing things like a flag level update, but what's an update?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Is there an update for flag lounge?
Yeah, like there's.
Yeah, so basically the update with that is that there is no update. That's what you wanted to say, so.
Senator, sorry, it's not Senator, but President.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so.
Yes, President, no, go ahead. You
Um,
want to add something on that?
There's someone on the speakers list, guys.
Yeah, it is not.
I want to yield to Vice President Hawk, she's on speaker list.
Alright, I'm just gonna reply to his question, just to clarify. Alright, so. The flag laws update is that over last spring, they managed to put in a proposal submitted to the president's office. It's been sitting on President Michael's desk since, I think, June or May. She hasn't signed it, she hasn't approved it, they had a bunch of different solutions that the student flag law advisory board had recommended. Eventually, it's up to her discretion, she hasn't made a decision yet for various reasons, including political backlash, et cetera. This is something that I believe Lily will continue working on, and if there's updates from her committee, she'll present them whenever it's available. So,
Sounds good.
I need to be yielded.
Yeah, someone needs to yield to Vice President Hawk, please, Senator.
To Vice President Haas.
Thank you, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just wanted to sort of prompt a discussion between us. So you guys are all senators, you are student representatives, and we know, like, all of us are aware of the dining issues that have been going on in the past few weeks. We have all these updates on here, but we would like your input too, to sort of understand where you guys stand about this, what you think would be effective for us to do as SA. And I think we should talk about it instead of brushing it past, because this is a big problem. We have Lily and, the whole committee working on this, and she's met with Pam. We are constantly, talking about this and we're working on it, but there's constant backlash from students asking for refunds. There's that, stuff happening. So what do you guys feel about it? I just wanted to see if you guys had anything to say, because, it might feel uneasy, but I feel like we should.
Raise your hands so I can see you. All right, Senator Moore, go ahead.
One of the things that I've just been realizing over the last week is not only like the limit on times that things open, but also like in addition to that, like I used to be vegan and now no longer vegan since last year. I was sustainable, trying to get any food to control that regularly. I'm now vegetarian. And even with moving back from being vegan, there's still like, I waited in line, it was like really long. Took a long time to get into somewhere that I at least kind of knew would have food I could eat. I got there was like very little options, very little options. I had to move again, so like not, I think only just the concern of time, which I think is obviously the main one, having things open, but also like on top of that, adding any dietary restrictions. If there's only one or two days of campus you can reliably eat at, and then they're shut down or the hours are restricted, so you're essentially not doing, and then I think also like certain housing limitations on access to kitchens, those two in combination, and not giving out like microwaves or refrigerators, like ensuring everyone has that, means it's like, for some people, it's almost impossible to have reliable food sources. So I think like, one of the things I got out last year, I don't know how like possible it is, but like trying to get engaged in like microwaves and what you call it, like fridges like aren't perfect system, but at least like you can buy something else, like eat it at your own time. But if you can't ensure that everyone has access to that, or like don't provide that through the school, then you can't even have that as backup, so.
Would you like to respond to that?
Well, about the vegan options, Lily has sent an email to Cam, which was yesterday, was it? About roots and shoots being closed, and about, vegan and vegetarian options being low. And, that is something that is being looked into, we haven't heard back from him yet. About the fridge and microwave thing, that is a good idea. We haven't really, thought about that, because firstly, the first year quad and other buildings that don't have microwaves or fridges in the lounges or in the kitchens, don't have the electrical sort of support to have it, because I sort of looked into it over the summer when students were living in Gilbert. But I can sort of reach out to website and see if that, with the current situation, if that's something they'll consider. So thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, Senator Saudi, you're on the speakers list, so. Okay, anyone else have any comments, questions for Steve or Sana? Okay, do you guys want to talk about any more of your updates, or? Okay, go ahead.
We have a checkboard.
Oh, I thought it was like.
I was looking for it.
Okay, also like, if you want to stand when you're talking, go ahead. Just so, because like, I'm looking at it on the screen and like you can't really tell who's talking, so with masks, so if you want to stand up, if you have something to say.
Right, I'll stand in the corner because I don't want to end up blocking someone else's view. I'll stand there. All right, so we have a bunch of updates from exec this year, most of them pertaining to just regular housework and being sure things are working in working order. Starting off, we're looking for representatives for three committees. The gender waiver, bless you. The gender waiver committee, which is a committee that exists for the sole purpose of making sure that any and all organizations on campus that only cater to students of a single gender get a waiver from the school to be able to operate as such, because at large, the school has a policy of not allowing any such organizations to exist. We want all of our organizations to be completely inclusive, with the exception of some club sports, fraternities, and sororities. The purpose of this committee is to make sure that they sit down with a bunch of other administrators, go over the materials submitted by all of those organizations, and decide whether or not they believe that any such organization that requests a waiver is granted one. Then we have the FSA subcommittees, which is fraternity and sorority affairs. I think it's 4 different committees or 3. We're going to need representatives for those 2. They basically make sure that they're going through like reviewing all the materials that the FSA administration gets from all of these drafts. So there's one committee that deals with the substandards, basically making sure that all of the standards that FSA organizations are expected to meet are being met. They annually review all of these organizations and their progress, et cetera, and the purpose is to make sure at the end of the day that they're matching the minimum required level or standard that they would usually be expected. The third one that we have an unusual vacancy for this year is the Academic Administration Committee. Usually the academic affairs chair is the person who sits on this committee. However, unfortunately, as we had academic affairs chair resign right at the start of the semester, we're looking for people, especially people who've been involved with academic affairs, to potentially let us know if they'd like to sit on this committee. I have no idea where that sound is coming from.
That's your face.
But it is considered very interesting. Love to hear it. Anyway, so yeah, any of you who are interested in sitting on any of these 3 committees, please feel free to reach out to me or comment Matt, and try your hardest to ignore my Facebook in the background.
Yes, guys, please, we do need representatives from you guys to sit on these committees, so if you are interested, please reach out to us.
Yeah.
Alright, the next thing we have are updates for support, updates in terms of what we've been doing to support students from Afghanistan, students from Greece, Turkey, Croatia, and Haiti. At large, we reached out to Molly Morrison, Ravi Shankar, and a bunch of other administrators. We're making sure that they reach out to students who come from these specific backgrounds and make sure they have access to all of the resources that can help make sure they're able to make it to campus, B, if they need any kind of logistical support, they have that. C, if there's any visa issues and or issues related to finance, the school is able to make sure that these students have a backup. It's usually, all of this is usually done through the Basic Needs Hub. We're advertising it to these student populations directly, but if you know of a student who comes from any of these backgrounds and does not receive such an email from Molly or anyone in the ISO office, again, feel free to reach out to us and we'll make sure that that student is also accounted for. Based off of all the issues that have happened over the last year and a half, ISO and Molly Morrison, who's the International Student Advocate and Advisor, is setting up a template for the support of students facing any adversity across the globe and or the country. So in the future, if there is an event that takes place at any part of the US and or across the world, the school will just send out like a specific email to the students from those specific areas and be like, hey, we're aware of the fact that you guys are dealing with some stuff right now. Here are the resources we have for you. Please let us know how we can help you further. It's something that's going to be approved by Dean Burns. I think it is already on his top table and or will be very soon. And we're just waiting for his approval and we'll be good to go. Next thing is we have the Presidential Advisory Council. We're just recruiting at the point. We've had about 15 to 20 applications thus far. We're waiting for a little bit more to see if any other applications roll in. Fred is reaching out to the leadership of various cultural and political organizations on campus just so that we can make sure all of these organizations know that we're willing to work with them, collaborate with them. And within the next few days, we'll be making final decisions in terms of who's sitting on the Presidential Advisory Council, when we'll be meeting, what our location will be, et cetera, et cetera. We're also trying to do this through hosting a dinner with the leadership of S organizations across the university. So that's to make sure that if there are certain organizations, students of which do not go on campus, they have some degree of support coming from the SA's executive office and that we're able to understand any and all issues that they're going through and if we can help them out. That's it. The next two updates are for things that are slightly, well, larger and more effort requiring. These are our two long-term projects. Number one, we're trying to set up an endowment fund for work. So as many of you might know, work has recently been put on pause because of a number of reasons. But what we're trying to do and make sure is that we're able to set up two different accounts. One, a gift account for work, which would hopefully raise up to $100,000, utilizing which work would be able to purchase an ambulance, and B, an endowment fund, which would be at the very least $25,000 and or in excess. The way endowment funds work is that they generate a specific amount of money based off of interest that they make every year, and you basically never run out of it. Our plan is to utilize that endowment fund for work so that they can sustain their machinery and utilize it as much as possible. The other update is in relation to the contract with Aramark. We've been working on issues related to Aramark, A, because of the ethical concerns that a number of students have had, B, the UR Black Lives Matter Reloaded petition from last spring, and last fall, and C, because of the current state of dining and how it's performing on campus. We're trying to work with the administration, specifically the Director of Dining Services. Lily's taking lead on this for the time being, and we're trying to make sure that by the time it is time to renew the school's contract with Aramark, which is June 2022, we're able to present viable alternatives that the school can potentially have contracts with that are A, more ethical, B, better at doing their job, C, better at making sure that students across campus are not even half-cooked chicken. Any questions
Any questions?
or concerns?
Comments?
Yes.
I wanted to ask how everyone feels about there being a specific set template for supportive students. Is that something that you guys think is, a good way to go about it, or is like a personalized template or message per crisis something preferable?
You got it, Senator Matt?
Senator, about to charge you.
So this is actually a project that I was working on in ISAC last semester. And I think at the rate that this is happening last semester, I think a lot of students wanted personalized emails. Because and again, at the end of the day, I mean, if we're talking about just sending out emails to students, I don't know if that's necessarily even enough for these students, but I think because we have to get it passed through administration, we need to give them a template, or else they're not going to send anything at all. And if they do send something, it's not going to be worth it. So I think a template is a good place to start. But I mean, for people that work on these templates, if they could personalize it for every price, I mean, it's probably a lot to ask for. It shouldn't be, but it is. Then that's something that they should consider. But I think just starting off with the general template is a good place to get what are.
Would you like to respond, Senator Representative Pop?
Oh, I agree with that. I just, somebody asked me this privately, and I just brought it up because they want to.
Senator Moore, go ahead.
I would agree with you guys. I think ideally having it be more personal and be flexible, but it's a matter of knowing outreach. Or a more templated version, there's a template's better, but one thing I think would be, if it does become super templated, one thing I think is useful to have in that standard across the board template is just someone's asking for admin, but just actual reinforcement, if you need support or you need stuff in class, if you can't get a teacher, a professor, or whoever to agree on that in class space, we will commit to sending an email or we a bare minimum, we will follow up with them so that we do get that space. That is one thing I kind of saw last year is it's okay, we'll help you with all these things if you recognize it, but then there was no follow through. The professor was just suck it up, it'll be fine, it's been enough days. There's not follow through on supporting that. So if you take it a template, maybe you have to obviously push to
So as I understand what they're trying to do is make sure that they not only set up a template, but a specific checklist. So for instance, there are students from a specific part of the world, say that are struggling with a specific sort of crisis, they're not going to send out a generic template email being we heard you're in a crisis. We don't know what the crisis is, but we're going to check it out. It's going to be slightly more specific than that. The purpose of setting up the template is basically specific spaces dedicated to be filled with specific forms of text. They're not going to be very generic, they will cover specific issues. The other thing that I want to mention is that this school is very decentralized, because of which we often end up in situations where even though anything that say the peer network receives should go through to the professor who's being very unfair to a student, it doesn't, because that letter doesn't have to come here, but it has to come from TCAS. So we are working on sort of helping bridge the divide between, say, peer and TCAS, and then the advisor is going to be the one actually reaching out to the professor. But I think it's going to take a little bit more time, and it'll also depend on the new leadership that the school has in the coming year or so, because we are waiting for a new provost who's going to be in charge of all of this stuff, and we're hoping there'll be more open to changes that we make. So that's.
Yeah, just to say, so I agree with what has been said up to now, but I just want to point out one thing that might be a little bit, nuanced, and we might want to think about that in the future. So if we're trying to send personalized emails, it really depends on, how those emails are written. Sometimes people who are not from those countries, they can read off obviously on them, but maybe they don't have the full picture. So this email might also include some mistakes that seem like small mistakes, but the person who's receiving the email may have a very different response. So I think that's something that's very important to consider.
Like have a substantially different perception.
Yes.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair, and I think that's something we've seen over the last year as well, especially with the Israel-Palestine situation. I think it's essential to make sure we hold the school accountable. We can't write those emails for them, it's not our job. But what we can do is, in any situation where we do see them lagging behind, we flag that up in Senate, we talk about it in Senate, we reach out to the right administrators and make sure that we hold them accountable to the degree that we can. And Senator Sorkin, please go ahead.
Yes, if you do have a comment or a question, please raise your hand. We'll get you on the speakers list. Senator Moore, go ahead.
I don't know if this committee exists, is there like an email, so I know there's one that like usually is all the students, is like, is there one that's like more targeted and written to like the audience of professors at all, or?
That's a very valid question. So far, I don't think there is a specific email that exists just to reach out to professors. More often than not, I think a lot of these situations, especially related to professors, are resolved by CCS advisors just forwarding whatever information that they have about a student to the Office of Disabilities, and the Office of Disabilities sending out a generic template form that they already have and have had for the last 10 to 15 years, probably more, to that specific professor. So for instance, if you get sick, if you get COVID, if there's an emergency, if you break your arm, get a concussion, all things that I've done over the last few years, you go to the disability office, you tell them, this is what I'm going through. Well, usually most people go to CCS, they refer them to the disability office, and from there, an email goes out to the professor. It's computer generated, there's a form that the disability coordinator fills out, and then the professor knows that, this student is dealing with this stuff, I need to give them extensions, et cetera, and accommodations.
That's a follow-up question as well. Would it be possible, like, either through publicity or something else, to like better have that process laid out? Because I know I have like a friend who's for different reasons, like, she had like an extended circumstance, she needed to go with all this, and especially she was the first year, she had like no idea that they passed out email. And just like while that was happening, she had assignments racking up. So I feel like if we had some way to better lay this out, like besides that would be helpful. As like a reference point.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. We'll make sure to take notice of that as an exec as well. And we're hoping once we have an academic affairs chair, we're also able to take notice of this and work on this proactively, because we also want to make sure that the legislative counterparts of the executive are.
Thank you, Senator Blatchford.
Just really quickly, I just wanted to ask Dawn if there was any like sort of thing anyone was putting in place to like hold admin accountable, because like I'm like, again, like this is an important thing, like setting up the template, making sure that emails are passed, but is admin like aware like that, they should like send out these emails like in a timely manner, because like last semester, I guess just specifically like on campusing with like Asian American students, the email that was sent out, it was sent out like months after the whole entire thing, and it was terrible. So it's like, even if you make a template, so like even if you send it out, like, and they don't send it out in time, like it's just not a good email, so like what are you doing to like?
That's perfectly fair. So I think in situations such as the one you just mentioned, we're looking forward to having a minority school affairs liaison who will be able to flag those issues and let us know and reach out to the appropriate administrators for those issues. But beyond that, I think on our part, we're trying to make sure as soon as we're notified or we're aware of the crisis happening across the world, we take notice of that and reach out to the appropriate people. Beyond that, I think because we're only in the initial stages of setting up the template and all that stuff, and we're not fully aware of all of the crises that are happening across the globe at any time, I think we rely heavily on the Office of Global Engagement, because they're primarily the ones that handle like any news, any reports, any crises that happen outside of the camps. So I think we'll likely set up a meeting with their leadership soon, just to make sure that we understand what their mechanism is. At the end of the day, I think something that the school has struggled with over the last few years is recognizing when and if they can or should speak. And the second thing is, a lot of the time, they will reach out to students in private, but not publicly, primarily because of a fear of political and or social backlash. So I think we're trying to counter that by explaining to them the best way they can communicate with students. And we also foresee a lot of communication through SA government channels in the future, just because a lot of the times the university administration is not in a place to overtly express where they stand about issues, but we do, and that is literally our job.
Thank you. Is there any other questions, comments, gallery? All right, so thank you very much, exec. We can go into public relations. Delay, Secretary Mendez.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Alana Jeffrey, for those who don't know me. Hi. Real quickly, I just want to emphasize there's a form in CCC on the website of the government for you to request a PR, post something, whatever it is, email, post, story, whatever. Please communicate your needs through this form, so I know when you want to post it, what is it about, all the details with me having to go back and forth with you. It'll just make it much easier and it's much more organized for me to handle our relations. So if you have any questions about this form, obviously you can email me, but don't text me or email me your request. It just makes everything very organized and no. But yeah, there's a link, please just bookmark it, anything, yes. Secondly, I just wanted to make the update that we're looking for approval to launch a new website or redesign it. I don't know your opinions about the website, but our opinion is that it's not, the best, kind of old fashioned, so we're working on it, we're gonna just redesign the whole thing. If you have any input about that, please let me know, I'll be glad to hear you and work with you as well. But yeah, and also any feedback as far as like what I started to pull this summer or anything, also contact me. I'm free to listen to you. But yeah.
Thank you very much, Secretary Mendez. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I'd like to start away.
I have two comments. Firstly, Alondra's done the most amount of work over the summer, so based on made our Instagram really interactive and active. I think that is something that we were really looking for, and we owe it to her. She's taken complete charge of it herself and did everything and continues to. Second thing is that we are looking for an assistant to the Secretary of Public Relations. If you know anyone who might be good for the role to help her out because it's a lot of work, please let her know.
That's gonna be a common theme tonight. A lot of positions are open, so please tell your friends if they're interested. There's a lot of things on the SA website you can apply for.
Share the post on Instagram about open positions.
She works so hard on the post, guys, when she makes one, try to share it on your stories, tell your friends. They're really high quality posts. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, we can move into JC. I know.
Yeah, you guys already heard quite a bit. Zayn, Deputy Chief, we got a filled position, so that's good. Yeah, we'll be around soon. That's all I introduced.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I'm guessing there's no questions since you already announced that, but we go into Senator updates. So Senator Sorkin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I got a small presentation, so yeah, I would appreciate just 5 minutes of attention.
People see it from over here.
I think you can put it on your computer.
You can work on it on your computers. I'm gonna put it up on screen, it's coming up. It's linked in the agenda, so click on it. Just direct me where you wanna go, it does lag a little bit, so.
So as for switching the slides, I can just say next slide, right? Okay, sounds good.
It's gonna lag a little bit, it's like 10 seconds behind, just FYI. So.
Okay, well, we'll try to make it in the most natural way. Okay, hello everyone. Just for those of you who don't know me, my name is Boris. I'm currently a senator of class of 2023. And today I'm presenting you a project that I, as well as some other people, were working on for the last 4-5 months. Yes, I think since April. And yeah, so the project I was working on is called the Student Association Accountability Office. As many of you, I also run in the elections, and during the elections, I made some promises to our students, and one of the promises was that I would come up with a permanent solution how to address permanently the accountability issue during the Students Association government. And this is what I came up with. So, Mr. Speaker, please, next slide. So firstly, what is this project about? You might be wondering, Boris, what are you proposing? I propose to create a pretty much a body, an institution, if you will, the sole role of which will be to first be independent of all the other branches of student government, and secondly, pretty much keep accountable the rest of the student government. How would it be? Why do we need it in the first place? So, first and foremost, we need it for senators and other SA government officials, so that there was a body that would make sure that they perform, that they actually, fulfill the promises they made. So that's first, one of the reasons we need it. Secondly, currently, there was no ways to assure systematic assessment of people's work and productivity, resulting in lower standards in student government. I'm sure that some of us heard those stories about some senators in the past just not doing their best, and I think that this is something that could be addressed with having the institution that I'm proposing today. And also, of course, the Student Accountability Office, as proposed in this legislation, will be independent, as I already said. So it will not be adding up to the existing structure of the student government for just a simple reason, because it won't be part of student government. It will be independent of all the three branches. Mr. Speaker, please, next slide. So how would, wait, yeah.
This is my main job.
Is it the third slide?
This is the fourth slide.
Okay, fourth slide. Okay, yeah, I think I told everything on the third one, so yeah, we can go jump to the fourth. So you might be wondering, so how, wait, which slide is this?
Fourth slide.
Fourth slide, okay, excellent, sorry, it's confusing, I can't see it. So what will be the main job of the accountability office? Well, the main job will be to pretty much take the requests from the student government officials, as well as people not affiliated with student government, and work for them and prepare either recommendations or reports for the subject of the inquiry. So, for example, once we have the accountability office, if you're a student, you can submit an anonymous request for some particular part of student government being evaluated. And the accountability office, in the form of which it is currently being proposed, would go through the step-by-step evaluation of the inquired subject. All right. So yeah, fourth slide now, please. Yeah, wait, I just have some.
It's like 10 seconds behind.
Okay. That's
Third slide up.
So yeah, that's the next slide. Okay, let's just say next slide. That might be easier.
This one, how?
Yeah, this one right now. So you might be asking yourself, how would the accountability office operate and would its operation be effective? So effectiveness of this body was one of the primary concerns while I was working on this project, and pretty much all the work of it can be summarized in 3 steps. So first step is that the accountability request is submitted to the accountability office. And by requesting the one that I just described a few minutes ago. Second step is the office is going to process the accountability request and the issues that are being brought up in that request. And the third step would be the preparation and further submission of a report or recommendation for some specific action. Also, it should be noted that while I was drafting this project, there was a concern that I heard from many people, which was like how obligated would a senator, president, or anyone else be? How obligated would it be for them to follow the recommendation? And I addressed that in the project of this accountability office, and in the current status of this project there is no enforcement. So the accountability office will only be submitting their report or recommendation, and then it will be, up to the senator or president to either reject it or to actually follow it.
In the interest of time, I would just ask that you talk maybe 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? Yeah, sure. Okay, so I think we can go to, yes, exactly, with this slide that you're already at. So there might be a reasonable question, how complex will the structure be? And I should say that the project changed a lot. It was evolving and it's very different from what it was in the first draft. So right now, I would say that it has minimum structure. So it would be comprised of 6 people, which is even less than a committee. And honestly, it will be of the most, the smallest scale in terms of its size. So not only is it going to be independent from the government itself, but it's also going to be pretty small in the number of people working. So moving forward, at the next slide, so the next slide pretty much summarizes everything that I just told you. It shows you, the slide number 7. Yeah.
Maybe show like one more slide.
Yeah, this slide. So pretty much this slide summarizes how the accountability office would work. So as you can see, it has pretty much all the 3 steps here right here. So firstly, the accountability request received by the office, then the accountability office works on it, and finally, some report or recommendation is being released as a result. And yeah, we can move. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. We can move to next slide. The next slide would just summarize the feedback and project development. So it has a timeline of pretty much when the project began, what changes were made to that project, as well as what were the, I would say, landmark events in the overall timeline of work on this bill. And yeah, if we go to the next slide, slide number 9, it pretty much summarizes. It has summaries of all the changes that were made to this project since the first original draft. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The next slide is going to have credits and retribute. I'd like to thank everyone who took part in preparing feedback and just recommending the changes for this project. I want specifically thank Speaker Keel, Chief of Staff Lou, Chair Tsvetovich, ex-parliamentarian and Chair of Elections and Rules Committee Sahin, as well as many other people who contributed substantially to creation of this bill. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Boris. I think we're gonna move on to questions because this is one of the motions later. So let's address any questions that you have for Senator Sorkin later.
Yeah, we can discuss it during the motion.
So let's move on to Senator Tiskinen.
Hello everyone. Guess what I've been formally introduced. My name is Kevin Chusime, also 2023 Senator. And I also happen to sit on it's an IT committee where we discuss the priorities that the school should focus on in terms of the IT infrastructure. So, things like we're bringing credit card, allow us to pay for tuition, stuff like that. I think also the current issues with Wi-Fi might fall under that committee, although that's more urgent, so it doesn't need to be like tabled and discussed. But the reason I'm coming to you today is we have a bunch of stuff that we're working on, and that's the list. And what I need each and every one of you to do, to the extent that you're interested, is to just look through the list and maybe rank, give each a value of 1 to 5, 5 being the most important and 1 being what you would consider trivial. So it's a sliding scale, right? And I just want to get a sense of what you all think are the most important things that we should focus on as a school. And then I'll convey that information to the committee, like this is what the students think. So yeah, just do it at your own time and just shoot me an email, with what you think the priority should be.
Would you be able to send us on an email, because I know a few of us are having issue getting access.
Yeah, okay, so I think I will send an email to all of you, right? Is that the procedure, right? Yeah, with the link and maybe.
We'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
I think that the box link is not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not working.
Yes, I think that's it. If you have any questions.
Yeah, big question. I just want to say thank you very much for taking the initiative to serve on this committee. Really. All senators, please actually go and do this, right, from is it 1 to 5? Or did you want 1 to 5? Support, really support.
Yeah, just looking at the project, just there's a blurb there. I think project overview, then in your mind's eye is important, then give like a 1 and 5. I think the best thing to do would be to like just copy paste the whole table onto an Excel sheet and then just have like a row. And then yeah, you can share that with me. That'll be good. Or if that's too much work, you can just the ones you give a 5, just send those. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what's important, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much. We can take questions. President Cosby.
Right, so I think I have 2 specific questions. A, is there not a form that all of these people would fill out and just rank like the priorities just utilizing that form, because that'd be very organized, very succinct. I think it'd make it much easier for everybody else to deal with that.
Okay. Yeah. That's actually a very perfect suggestion. Sounds like you should be on this committee as well. So my assignment tonight is that I'll probably make up this form. So that doesn't mean that you shouldn't check the form, because it will have like the descriptions, but like this form with like a ranking. How we do it in the Google Forms. So something like that, and I'll email that out instead. Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Yeah.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Senator Kisime. All right. I think we can go into finances updates. So first off, the academic affairs chair. The search is ongoing. Currently, I'm the temporary chair, but I cannot do this all semester. So please, if you are interested, senators that are on the committee, if you're interested, if you know someone who might be great at this role, we do need a chair and someone who can put in the time and effort that this role requires. So the application is open, it's live. Please feel free to apply. Secondly, a new parliamentarian has been selected. Can you go over there? We're talking about that a little bit later on meeting when you guys can, ask your questions and we'll vote on to get selected. And finally, Constitution Day preparations are underway. This September 17th, it's gonna be a Friday. We're gonna have Constitution Day. So because we are a federally funded school, we're required to do this. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Me and Misty are planning it. We're gonna give out free Constitution, red, white, and blue popcorn, candy, and free drinks from 11 to 1 on the Wilson Commons porch. So please come, tell your friends to come. It's gonna be a lot of fun and learn about the US government. So super awesome there.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any, okay, Senator Kisime?
Well, then not in here. What is Constitution Day?
What is Constitution Day? So it's just a day celebrating the United States Constitution. The Constitution is the governing documents that details the laws of our country. And so once a year we celebrate it, Constitution Day. Does anyone else have any questions, comments for me in this seat? All right, seeing none, we can go into the other items. So elections coordinator Briggs.
I don't actually have anything that important. It's just like the only time when you speak, and you also want to say it up here. So what do I have? All right, so first of all, I'll give you all an update on who we have for elections as far as candidates go. We've got 23 first-year Senate candidates. We've got 18 first-year class council candidates. We also have a competitive senior Senate election with 3 folks running for 2 Senate. I don't know if y'all seen them. Some of the campaign materials are really, really cool. They're all around campus. People have started to draw with chalk on the sidewalks, and so we're kind of getting that in-person feel back again, and it's just really, really cool to see it because I've never seen it before. So I really like it. The other thing I wanted to let y'all know is that on the 9th and the 10th, those are the days of voting. We're gonna have a voting booth information table in the front of Wilson Commons, so maybe people, they don't know voting's going on or they forgot. We'll have a big poster, I'm gonna work with it, with a launcher on it to put on the front of the table that says like essay voting. And we're gonna sign people up to vote so that they can fill up a ballot. I'm gonna need volunteers for that though. We've got the slot for 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on both days. So that'll go through really lunch and dinner. I think those are kind of the 2 most important areas that we need to make sure that we've got people at. If you all want to go sign up, I put a link in a Google form there. You can pick the best 1-hour slot on each day or on one of the days or however you want to do it to just come and volunteer and try and get the first years and the seniors excited to go ahead and vote for who's going to represent them. And then that's all I have for y'all. I'd really, really appreciate it if y'all can sign that Google form though, so I'm not sitting there for 7 hours.
I just want to say before you step down, I think, to my knowledge, this is the most competitive election we've ever had, so please give them a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Election Coordinator Briggs, and you all. Oh, President Coffey, go ahead.
Thank you. So I was wondering if you could also utilize the 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. slot. Also collect information and data on how many people usually walk into Wilson Commons at those specific hours.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's information that you can utilize in the future years. And, compare the amount of population that we have in, say, Douglas Commons, Douglas Dining Hall, Danforth, et cetera, so as to figure out what the best place to set up shop is.
Yeah, that sounds good for sure.
Good thing.
I'll work that in.
Thank you. Before I open up for questions, I just want to say, senators, really be much appreciated if you could sign up for even just 1-hour slot to help Garrett have these tables running these 2 days. So please go ahead and fill out that form, and if you can sign up for an hour or 2 or more. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Garrett? All right, seeing none, we can go on to administrative business. So,
I'm gonna go ahead and do my homework here too.
all right. Also, I just want to say before going to administrative business, I did mention academic affairs. We're also looking for LAs. So all the committees, we could all use some extra help. I know you guys know that. Please tell your friends. I'm sure Garrett's going to be telling all the losing candidates that we have all these open positions available. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. All right, so you guys know how motions work. We're going to do the same thing with discussion. Like raise your hand if you would like to motion, second, or talk, because this is probably where you guys are going to be the most participatory. So if you normally just raise your hand, I'll be able to make the list. All right, so let's go on to administrative business. Is there a motion? Senator Hathaway.
Motion to approve the minutes from 5/7.
There's a second. Senator Yoon. All right, we can go into discussion. I don't remember which person wrote it, either Senator Hathaway or Senator Yoon did the minutes for that meeting. If you guys want to answer questions, you can direct it to them. Otherwise, we can go right to the vote. All right, seeing none, we're going to go to a vote by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent? All right, the motion passes. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? Senator Sorkin.
Motion to approve Geneva and Kingston as per here.
Is there a second?
Second.
Senator Moore, I'll take you. All right, so let's go into discussion. I'm going to open the floor up. Well, first I'll talk a little bit about how we chose Geneva. So she interviewed with me and Sabine. We loved her answer. She seems like she's going to be very committed to this role. We're super excited to have her on the team, and I implore all of you guys to direct any questions you have to her. But first, I'm going to give you, Geneva, a chance to introduce yourself and kind of explain why you want the role.
Yeah, excellent.
And I feel like standing.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I didn't stand. Power complexes and that's fun, yeah. So hi, I'm a third year at UMR. I'm studying philosophy, politics, and economics. One of the main reasons why I just heard about the role and that it was open was Boris, he mentioned it. I at first wasn't particularly interested in it based on just other things I was involved in on campus. The more and more we chatted and talked, and I learned more about sort of how you guys act behind the scenes to do a bunch of things for the university. I realized it actually would align a lot with a lot of the interests and values I have, and this is just connecting with other students who are interested in similar things to I am with respect to policy, having my ear to the ground on just like how to serve students in other leadership capacity roles I hold on campus. And then also just realizing this might be a way to exercise the skills that I've been able to develop in classes up until this point and other leadership positions. So that's sort of why I'm interested in the role and why I'm generally looking qualified and excited to be working on the future.
Thank you very much. Also, I'd like to ask our unit here. No one? All right, I guess we can go right into a vote if there's no questions. All right, let's go into a vote by roll call when the deputy speaker is ready.
Senator Badcharji.
Yes.
Senator Chin.
Yes.
Senator Stavropoulos.
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Toyman. Senator Hathaway.
Yes.
Senator Foley.
Yes.
Senator Moore.
Yes.
Senator Sawadi. Senator Sorkin.
Most definitely, yes.
Senator Toshima. Senator Tusini. Senator Wong.
Yes.
Senator Uni.
Yes.
All right.
With one absence, 11 yeses.
Congratulations. You're officially- I'm so excited to work with you. I'm sure you're doing a great job. All right, is there a motion? Senator Yoon.
Motion to approve Lily elected as chair of campus life.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just talk briefly for the discussion. So at our last meeting, we approved her as chair of student life. So officially, we don't have a chair of campus life. However, Lily has been doing great work for us over the summer. She's super involved. I'm sure the senators on our committee can attest to that. So I was kind of envisioning this motion being quick and easy since we already approved her as the chair of student life. Is there any questions or comments that anyone would like to ask?
So, it sounds like now she's the chair of two committees.
She's currently the chair of student life, and we don't have a chair of campus services, but we did pass the motion to merge the two. So we do have a chair of student life, but not campus life officially. This motion is just a procedural motion, should be very quick and easy. Any other questions? She actually isn't here tonight, but I didn't think there was gonna be any questions, so. All right, we're going to a vote by roll call whenever the deputy speaker is ready.
Senator Badcharji.
Yes.
Senator Chin.
Yes.
Senator. Wait a minute. Senator Hathaway.
Yes.
Senator Ola.
Is it Ola?
Ola?
The H? Or is it Ola? Ola. Ola.
Senator Moore.
Yes.
Senator Sawadi. Senator Sorkin.
Absolutely, yes.
Senator Hiroshima.
Yes.
Senator Sunema.
You see,
Getting worse. Senator Moore. Senator Yoon.
Yes.
All right, with 11 yeses and 1 abstention, the motion passes. Congratulations.
Motion.
Senator Moore.
Motion to override the Senate bylaws to approve the duties of mandatory minorities in various ways. Liaison.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Toyovich, thank you. All right, so we can go into discussion, or how do you want to start?
Yeah, so we interviewed the cover a bunch of positions in the spring. Unfortunately, after we went through that process, we weren't sure what we wanted to do with her application. We thought she was great for all of the applications and positions that she'd applied for.
So we're kind of confused, and we really did need someone for the Minority Student Affairs liaison position. However, there are certain legislation and bylaws that prohibit a senator who's part of the executive branch of the legislative branch to also simultaneously be part of the executive branch, barring an approval from the Senate. So if the third of you decide to vote in favor of this, we'll be overriding the bylaws, effectively allow me to take on the position. I think she's a phenomenal person for the job. I've seen her advocate for a number of communities across like last semester. And I also think the application that she presented and the ideas across that she had were phenomenal, and I think we'd love to have her on board.
I would like to echo all of those sentiments. She was a great candidate, just unfortunately didn't have a position for her. Although minority student affairs liaison usually is an executive position, that's why we're doing this motion to override our bylaws and have it so that Adria, who's a senator in the legislative branch, can serve in this executive position role. So I'll turn it over to Senator Bhattacharjee to introduce yourself, give a little description of why you want the role. Go for it.
Is everyone okay with like sitting down?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So hi everyone, my name is Adria, class of 2024 senator. So yeah, I just want to first say like thank you to Cindy, Kusama, and Matt for interviewing me for this position. It was an accidental application, but I'm super thankful that I'm here. I just want to preface, like obviously like many people like have any specific questions about like my plans or like what I want to do. I'd be 100% open to answering them, but I think just like before any of that, I just want to like tell each and every one of you that minority representation is an issue that I work on regardless of any position on campus. It's an issue that I've been passionate about since I've come to campus, and obviously there's a lot of work to be done on this campus. So I think having this role would just give me access to resources, the contacts, you know, anything that I need to like get all my projects done. So I'd be super thankful if you'll pass, you know, this motion and let me have this position. Thank you. That's great questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Senator Sorkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick question. As a potential minority student affairs liaison, how do you perceive the communication with the campus-led subcommittee, which is also charged with, you know, minorities and equity and inclusion plans for the committee? So what's your perception? Like, are you going to work with them, and like, what are your general thoughts on the cooperation between the liaison position and the equity and inclusion plan?
Yeah, thank you, that's an excellent question. Obviously, I'm a senator on that committee, so I think a lot of the projects and goals that I want to accomplish will probably coincide anyways. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of any projects that I want to do first, I would definitely take into consideration like any other minority students affairs, like I guess just like priorities first, and then anything other committees that come up, those would be like at the top of my list. So yeah, obviously definitely working with any and all committees and putting those needs first.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Moore.
Mainly ideas of how to like something.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think number one, and this is like obviously a project that's going to be like long term, but it's definitely just building the trust between minority students and SA. I think last semester, and obviously being a minority student myself, and I'm also president of the Asian American Alliance on campus, I hear a lot of sentiments from students across like just different like different clubs and different classes, things like that, that they don't see the purpose in SA, and that they don't see us actually like advocating for them. And so obviously like being a senator, being in this role, like there's a lot of sentiment that I have too, like as like just not being a senator last semester, just being in LA. There's a lot of things that I wish Senate would just do for minority students on campus that I want to implement and bring to y'all, and hopefully import on all of y'all to do. Like go to more events, like be more inclusive with like minority students on campus. So just building that relationship is my number one project. I think a lot of the other projects that I'm considering working on were things that Sabine Kusama mentioned earlier, but I think the bias incident related report system was a project that I started last semester, but admin didn't let me see through. But that's something that I'm going to start working on this semester for sure. Creating that template, that crisis template for international students, domestic students as well. And I think mental health services for international students was a project I started in ISAC last semester that I want to see through. And so yeah, I think those are just things that are at the top of my head, but just going back to what Boris asked earlier, if any like priorities or concerns that other minority students would bring up, those would be at like the top of my list. Secretary.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Gallery? All right, we can move into a vote by roll call then when the deputy speaker is ready. All right, let's get those names there.
Senator Bhattacharjee.
You give those, you know,
Senator Chin. Yes. Senator Fox.
Sorry, say it. What's your vote?
Yes, of course.
Senator Hathaway.
Yes.
Senator Boulay.
It's getting nervous.
It is, it's getting nervous.
Alright, we'll have a lesson after this meeting about how to pronounce things.
Senator Moore.
Yes.
Senator Sawi. Senator Sorkin.
Absolutely, yes.
Senator Toshima.
Yes.
Senator Tusima.
So close to see.
Yes.
Senator Wong.
Yes.
Senator Yoon.
Yes.
So with 10 yeses and 2 abstentions, the motion passes. Congratulations to Rita. We're so sorry happening. New business, is there a motion? Senator Sorkin.
Motion to approve the bill to establish the Students Association Accountability Office.
Is there a second? Senator Tusime. All right, so we just had a presentation about this motion. Just letting everyone know that we will not actually be voting on this bill tonight, we'll be tabling it, but we can discuss it here. And I'm sure Senator Sorkin would like the feedback. So I'll turn it over to you, Senator Sorkin, go ahead.
So yeah, as I just presented all of you, there was a huge project. The sole purpose of which is to actually have some mechanisms of ensuring accountability within the student association. And I think that this is very important, I would even say crucial for us to establish a systematic way of doing that. Because up until this point, the student government was regulating itself, it was keeping itself accountable, and it was like, you know, just one thing controlling itself. And I believe that in order to have a better, more systematic, and in general proper way of assuring permanent accountability, we definitely need a body, an institution that will be charged with that. And pretty much the project that I am proposing today is pretty much being the solution to this. It establishes that very body, that very institution that may actually make the student government more productive and efficient, not just this year, but in the long run as well. So yeah, I really urge all the senators in this room to vote in favor of this bill, because we need to have systematic ways to address accountability to student government. So yeah, I yield back to you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna start off with questions. I see a lot of hands I'm gonna get to, but we're gonna start with President Cosme.
I'd like to start off with the senators.
Oh, okay, well, Senator, go ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, so I guess I wasn't as interested last year, so you talk about like what are specific things you're trying to hold people accountable for, like groups, individuals, attendance, project follow through, like what is the focus of accountability?
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Also, sorry, I know this is gonna be a big discussion, so as we continue, like if you want to talk, please raise your hand, put you on the list, so. That's all I'm gonna say, gallery included. All right, continue, sorry.
Yeah, for centers, just say yield back to centers working. Yeah, thank you, Senator Moore. That's a wonderful question. So I believe that my personal opinion is that we need accountability where it would be needed. And I know that this answer may sound a bit vague, but this body, it will not be, its function is not going to be, it's not going to maintain accountability in some particular way. Instead, it will be receiving the requests for accountability. So for example, if a student as a constituent of some senator or other elected officials in government thinks that their representative is not fulfilling their promises, election promises, or just not fulfilling their responsibility properly, that student would be able to submit a request to the student accountability office. And then it would become the accountability officer's job to pretty much go for that request to see if there are any potential, if that's a valid, concern that the student has, and then come up with either a report about the subject of this inquiry or the recommendation, which would be more specific thing, which would imply that the accountability office would think that something should be changed based on that inquiry. So to summarize my answer, the purpose of this office is not to maintain some particular aspects of so, but rather give this opportunity for students to address their concerns, the concerns that they. I hope this answers your question. And I yield back to.
All right, go back to the floor. So I'm gonna call on President Osborne.
Yeah, like I said earlier, at the end. So
You want okay? So Senator Hathaway, you're next.
So I guess I have a couple of concerns. First off, I think like SA is pretty understaffed as it is. So it might just add like more, I don't know, bureaucracy, a bunch of new positions. I think ACJC does a lot of what this would be proposed to be done already. I guess there's also like conflict of interest concerns that I would have. And then lastly, like with the anonymous submissions, those can like tend to be pretty toxic. So yeah, those are my opinions. So I guess like, do you have any like ways that those concerns would be addressed within? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hathaway. So to summarize, the question is about the SA government being understaffed, and the second about toxicity. Well, as for toxicity, we already have a body. There is one committee which we had for many years that was functioning in a very similar way. The name of this committee is EVC, Election Violation Committee. So it was working in a very similar way to what I'm proposing in this project. I don't know, can we claim that EVC was toxic? I'm not sure about it. Because what their job is pretty much just taking the request the students have and then, pretty much working on them to see if there is actual violation of election. Well, that's.
I just like to interject, like that committee is still ongoing. Election coordinator Briggs currently runs it. The Chief Justice Smith, President Crosner are all on that committee currently with this current election. So just a clarification that it is ongoing.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
That on the clarification, the EBC does not get anonymous requests, so we know who is submitting a specific form. We're able to utilize that information to recognize malicious intent where there is.
It's for third campus groups.
What's up?
Third campus groups, right?
Yeah.
So you have to use your student ID.
Yeah, I think I was a bit misunderstood here. I was saying that the members of the committee will know who submitted the inquiry. But this information will not be released to general public. That's what I meant by unanimous. I'm sorry, there was a misunderstanding. I think this might have, if.
Gallery has a question.
Yeah. Okay, that's the first question that Senator Hathaway had that I want to address about student government being understaffed. That's true, but what we're establishing is an institution that may last more than just a year. It may change the way we've been functioning for many years. So I don't think that this would be the greatest thing to do, to consider this particular year and to kind of project it for the future years. Moreover, I would claim that in some years we had huge competition and we were not understaffed at all. And moreover, I mean, as far this concern about being understaffed, I think it mostly applies to the student government, but this thing will exist outside of student government. So I would claim that it may also make it less of a concern that this particular body might also get. I yield back to the floor.
That answer your question?
I yield to Chief of Staff.
Yeah, just a point of information, EBC, how it runs is that you receive like a validation form. The only person who knows who is submitting it is the election coordinator and the visor who is working with the election coordinator. Those are the only 2 or 3 if Anne Marie is involved. Those are only 3 people who knows who is submitting it. It's not like everybody knows who's submitting it.
We don't even know who submits it, we just see.
Exactly, they only see, so basically like, Matt only sees.
We just see the violation, and then we decide what to do with the violation, but we actually don't know who submits it, only here.
Exactly, and what Boris, Senator Sorokin was meaning, if I understand correctly, is that whatever he's doing for like check and balance for the Senate, everything submitted will be anonymous. Who will be seeing it? That's the question that we should ask instead of like, like, you see what I mean? So yeah, that's just a point of information. I give my time to the floor.
Alright, so I'm happy with, does that answer your questions? Okay, just letting you guys know, we have 4 people on the speakers list, not 5. So I'm gonna yield to Chief Justice Smith.
Yeah, so I guess my main concerns here are how it interacts with ACJC, because I'm an ACJC. Like 95% of the information we deal with is confidential for a variety of reasons. And so the powers here are kind of broad for inquiry and vague. You can request private information. I'm looking for more clarification there and how that deals with the confidentiality of the ACJC.
Yeah, I guess I'm really quick, right? Thank you, Chief Justice Smith. Yep. So that's absolutely right, but as the Student Association Accountability Office will exist within the bigger structure, which is Student Association. And of course, if there are some laws that prohibit the council from sharing some information, well, then the law would have the power over any other law that Student Association is set. So if there is some confidential information that we're not allowed to share based on either university or state or federal law or any other law which is higher than Student Association, then of course you won't be able to share it, even if the accountability office requests for investigation. But as for the information which exists within Student Association, the information which is allowed to be shared by all the other laws which are above the Student Association, then yeah, I believe that the accountability office would have access to that information. I yield back to Chief.
Yeah, can I just ask, so what's the enforcement there for like requesting that information?
Enforcement?
So like you send out a request and you don't get a reply from someone asking for information. What's the next mechanism?
In case, as for enforcement, I would say that same as it is in general in student government, because currently in student government, the enforcement in general is deputy parliamentarian and capacity. So that there is no mechanisms for enforcement for pretty much anything, because the only punishment that anyone can get is removal from their office, but that never happened, at least in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Please, correct me if I'm wrong. But so yeah, as for enforcement, I guess that it's going to be the same as it is with any other regulations, any other body within the association.
All right, we'll go to Senator Stoyanovich. We do have Frederick Miogo in the gallery as well, just letting you know.
If you want to yield to him.
Oh, I would yield to, yeah, I yielded back to the floor, so I guess I can also yield to.
Anyway, yeah, let me just, it's a short one. So I think that, and correct me if I'm mistaken, Senator Hathaway raised the point that we're understaffed. And, I fail to understand how this is true, and you can, explain it to me, because I feel that, election coordinator Briggs has just said that we had like most competitive election history, so I feel that that might sort of relate to this in some way. I yield back to the floor.
Direct that to Senator Hathaway, like this one.
I mean, the election hasn't happened yet, so I kind of meant like the past couple months, past year, it's been pretty. So
Other questions?
I guess so, I mean.
We do have someone in the gallery currently, you'd like to yield to Director Rogo.
Oh, yes, I yielded, oh, yeah, okay, never mind, yes.
There you go.
I have two questions, and it's more so based around like the reporting aspect of this.
What aspect?
The reporting aspect of like.
Reporting aspect.
Yeah, making the request to the, I guess. My first one is, will you require committees, different committees within SA to self-report what they're doing? Or is it more so this kind of like vigilante process where it's like somebody sees something going on and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go report this to this? Because it kind of, like looking from it from a perspective of SAC, a lot of what we do doesn't really come here. It's a lot of internal changes because we understand the policies from the work that we do. So if somebody comes in and says, yeah, kind of elaborate on that. You expect us to tell you guys when we're doing it, or is it always somebody else has to see something going on and report it to the committee?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's no self-reporting. You mentioned such thing as self-reporting because, I mean, I guess that all the committees, they have some reporting to the speaker and other, people who are in charge of the legislative branch. But within the accountability office, it's just the current bill, the current version of the bill, which is important because current version is very different from the old versions. And even the old versions, that's true, it was kind of said that in a very strict way that all the committees will have to submit all the information to the accountability office. Now it's more, well, it doesn't imply that with the current wording, like we can read it right now, check the bill right now, it doesn't imply that all the committees should report all their information to the accountability office. That's not the current version of the bill. Under the current version, the accountability office can inquire for some information and send that inquiry to a committee, for example, SAC or the council of the committee, same thing. And yeah, then the party which receives that inquiry can consider it and make a final decision on whether they will provide that information or not. And also there are some provisions in this bill allowing the accountability office to send follow-up requests. But again, the processing of follow-up requests would be the same as processing of regular requests. Does this answer your question?
Yes. And then my second question was, are you going to give a guideline for the type of requests that can be made or like your various areas? Or is it this just a broad scope we can address? And I think having a more focused lens kind of means, having a more focused lens for this like office committee will kind of make it more, I don't know, effective rather than having it. You guys are addressing, if it does come into play, like addressing everything, having more focused things that you address will be beneficial from my perspective.
Before you answer, I just will say that the time of 3 more people on the speakers list, we've already spent 25 minutes on this motion. Just let me know. Please be concise.
Yeah, I'll try to be very concise in my response. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was a question or more like a suggestion, right? So this is something I could definitely specify pretty easily within the text of the bill. So assuming that this bill is tabled today, or if it's not tabled, I would still definitely work on making it more specific. That's kind of provision which is allowed for a tabled bill. Like huge changes to the bill are not usually permitted if it's a table, but specifications such as one you just suggested would definitely be allowed if the bill is tabled. And I can provide my word, I can give my word to everyone here today that that's definitely something I could add as a provision, that the requests will be more specified, as well as we can add a provision that the office will be advised to work more specifically on particular issues and subjects of the information, subjects of whatever. So, yeah, I yield back to the floor.
All right, let's go to Senator Bhattacharjee.
Just a question on the staffing committee earlier. I guess this is a question for Senator Stoyevich. You mentioned something about the elections, and so like all these people running, there's only a certain amount of seats available to these freshmen and freshmen. So I think like throwing them into this, like first thing, or like expecting them to sort of take up these roles in this, accountability office when there are people that are gonna be held accountable and they haven't even done much yet. So I think on that comment, like going off what Senator Hathaway was saying, we are understaffed, like there's so many positions we have to fill. Also continuity and making sure people stay and actually do the work. I'm just sort of like questioning like the efficiency of this like office. So if y'all could just shed light on that or any comments on that.
So am I being like, go ahead. So yeah, as for being understaffed, firstly, we're talking about this office would create 16 positions. So as I was saying during the presentation, I'll repeat it now, this would be the smallest body we have, or at least one of the smallest. Any committee, whichever committee you will take, it has more people in it than this body. Moreover, it has a certain limitation on how many office holders there are, which is 6, which is different with the committees. For example, like when I proposed to merge student life and campus services back in the spring, that bill pretty much reduced the number of committees by 1, and already released a lot of possible candidates for other positions, because otherwise we would have 2 committees, but now we have 1. And that's just an example with the committee. This body, however, is not even of the size of the committee, it's even smaller. So speaking of this particular year, I may add a provision if that's necessary. We can definitely communicate after this meeting. I could add a provision to this bill that it may be launched in a pilot version for this year and automatically be dissolved if there is a shortage of people for this office. So that's something I could add, again, regardless, same as with chair of SAC, regardless of whether it's tabled or not. That's something that can be changed really easily and without any difficulties.
Senator Blatchford, do you?
Yeah.
Right, Senator Hathaway. Okay, President Cosme, the last one on the list.
Give me just a second. All right, so I absolutely appreciate the initiative, the idea behind this entire movement. I think it's great that we have people thinking about accountability within SA. It's great that people are reflecting on the need for accountability within SA. But I think at the very core, the establishment of this committee in itself inherently indicates a failure of the student association government. The dichotomy of power exists primarily for the reason of checks and balances. And if the 3 different branches, so myself, Matt, and Sam, can't hold each other accountable, that inherently reflects our failure as a comparison with government. So by establishing a committee as such, I think that would in itself signal that U of R, rural campuses, students association government has failed. And at that point, there remains no need for there to be a student government or an accountability office, we should just talk about. Secondly, I want to address some of the points that different people have brought up over time and also ask a few questions. So I think one of the questions that a lot of people other than me before this have alluded to is who will and who can file reports. And you initially mentioned it would be slightly anonymous, then you explained much more clearly that you will know, as in whoever the chair of this committee is will know, and members of the committee will know who's filing the report, and no one else outside that will. There will be strict confidentiality within that. Number 1, I think the bill inherently lacks in itself, at least in the state that it is, clear, specific policies, regulations, and bylaws that will dictate for that to happen. So I think number 1, one of my bigger concerns is confidentiality. For instance, if someone from, say, my cabinet, Alondra decides to come up and be like, Sabine was really messing up in this capacity and reports that to you, what provision is there within that bill? So I'm specifically talking about the wording of the bill as it exists. What would be there to make sure that that confidentiality is not used? Secondly, for it to be something that is passed by student association government, it would require, especially as an essay committee, to have at least 2 essay senators on. Those are the bylaws.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I clarify right now? Well, that's not a committee, that's independent of legislative branch thing. So any requirements pertaining to any type of committee will not pertain to the accountability office.
Absolutely.
Another thing, I'm sorry, I can't take notes right now because I don't have tables, so if you don't mind, I'll start answering.
Go ahead.
Another thing, you just, while speaking, you said that whoever the chair of the accountability office will be, and you mentioned me as
Accident.
yeah, well, I wouldn't be able to be the chair of it because I'm a senator. This would require me resigning, which I never plan to do and will never do. So I'm certainly not am I not, sorry, not only am I not going to be a chair and can't wait, under the current wording of this bill, I wouldn't even be able to sit on this office.
No, I agree. I apologize.
No, that's
For
totally
referring
okay.
to that was accident.
Totally fine. Yes, so yeah, go ahead.
I think it'd be best if I went over all these things, and if you have any questions, you answer them at me.
Just like going off that, this is the forum for that. Next time when this bill is brought up next week, this is a quicker discussion since we're talking about it right now.
Right, so I think the next question that I have, and this is perhaps the most specific one and the most important one, is if there's no enforcement as such, what primarily is the purpose of this body? So for instance, with ACJC, they have certain powers that they can utilize in order to make sure certain things are either implemented and or people are removed and or there are consequences for things that people decide to do. For instance, the ACJC board on say academic misconduct, they have the ability to sit on those meetings, make sure that if a student is messing up in a specific way, that student faces the consequences. Just an example. Such a thing would not be something that this accountability office would be able to do. And therefore, without enforcement, there is no incentive for people to listen to them or to take them seriously. So I'd like to understand what mechanisms you intend to use to incentivize and motivate people to do these things. Because without any form of enforcement, pre-existing enforcement, it seems like it'll be a committee that will do a lot of work that will require a lot of manpower, but effectively will fail to make sure that the conditions it has are implemented in real life. How would you tackle that issue?
Can I answer it right now?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, so the original idea behind this project has never been to create another powerful institution under this essay. Yeah. As you have mentioned, that there will be no incentives for any parts of the state government to actually follow the recommendations, but that is not what the original idea was. I would say that at some point there were some proposals that it could be a possibility to give some enforcement powers to the accountability office. However, I personally was not in favor of such provisions because it would exist outside of the student government. So I don't think that it would be healthy for SA in general to give powers for an office which would be existing outside of it. But that's first thing. And second thing, which is even more important than the first one, is that what I think is the problem is in student government is that we don't know ourselves what the issues are in terms of accountability. Sometimes we know, sometimes this is more specific, we know particular people who are, not fulfilling their responsibilities, but sometimes it's less obvious. Is the senator who, propose solve three issues fulfilling their responsibility? We don't know. They may do some things, but not do other things. They may fulfill some of their responsibilities, but not some other. So that's, honestly, that has been a mystery for me personally, and I assume for many other SA officials as well, if a particular office holder performs their responsibilities to the fullest. And what I want from this accountability office is not that they decide that someone is, good or bad in their position, but instead that they could evaluate that office holder's position and provide a feedback to the student government itself, saying that, hey, there's that person, he's not doing all right. And then the accountability office will just leave it up to the student government and other officials there to actually do something with this information or not to do it.
Yeah, thank you for the explanation. I unfortunately disagree because as I understand it, I believe that without proper enforcement, A, there would be no incentive for people to take their behaviors. B, if there exists SA officials who are already corrupt and or fail to do their job properly, telling them that they're not doing their job properly and just that as an evaluation, I don't think is strong enough motivation for them to change their behavior. But I'll leave that be for now, and we'll cover a couple of other things. I think the other thing that I wanted to respond to was the issue of understaffing. So I think we grossly underestimate how much work often goes into the project. It's not especially a committee that's expected to take on the whole load of whatever is going on within a state. I absolutely appreciated that Gregor mentioned, we have 23 senators running and 18 class councilors running. But practically speaking, a lot of those people, once election season is over, are going to fade away to the background. That happens every year, that's been the trend, that's what they continue. The 4 senators that we're going to get from the tertiary class and the 2 from the upper class are the only ones who will be part of SA government. And as part of the bylaws of this committee itself, those are not people you'll be able to take on board. As for the class councilors, they're relevant to this discussion unless you want to involve class councilors in capacity. And so I think for me, the idea of having someone hold us accountable is phenomenal. However, the way this bill presents that idea, or the mechanism that this bill intends to take to achieve those ideal goals, I don't think is very practical or pragmatic. Something that executive branch has been working on, though we have not athletes yet, primarily this is still in the works and hasn't fully been explored as an idea, is utilizing the presidential advisory council as a body to hold us accountable. That's a body that includes no SA officials, is comprised and constituted of members from various different political, cultural organizations and clubs and groups. And so by virtue of that, they're able to present and represent also the opinions and thoughts and the values of A, what students feel across campus, and B, what students feel about SA government as an institution in terms of what we're accomplishing and or failing to accomplish. Of course, that's something you couldn't have known, and we're not going to hold that against you. We never have, but that is just something we could potentially work with exec on in the long term if you so choose to work on a specific project of accountability.
Yeah, just a small thing, like this idea about having the presidential advisory committee to fulfill some of these roles. I mean, I don't know, like with this project, it's independent. Here it would be president and VP appointing people to this committee, presidential advisory committee. So the question is like, wouldn't there be a conflict of interest? That's my biggest question. But I think we can leave it to a separate discussion because right now the pending motion is the motion.
So I appreciate you bringing that up because this is going to be a millennial moment, but I'm willing to say Uno reverse because Uno reverse, man. Because if you are setting up a committee which requires us to select 5 members, including a chair, a deputy chair, and 3 representatives, that inherently also requires, well, effectively carries some degree of bias.
Wait.
It is a committee. Let me finish. It is a committee that is being formed by SA, but is going to be outside of it. So people can't randomly get together and become part of the committee, but the members of that committee, at the end of the day, need to somehow either be approved by SA government and or need to go through the process that we make every other person go through. If we're not making them go through the same process, then this is not a motion that you can bring up within SA government, because if the committee is not going to go through the procedures of SA government, it becomes irrelevant to the Students Association government. Much rather, it becomes an independent body that can exist on its own, that needs to form on its own, and then needs to find some validity in front of the school's administrators and the school student body. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that perfectly makes sense, but however, there is one horrible misunderstanding apparently going on. I know we can open the rules and procedure manual of the Capitol Office right now, but so
you can explain it.
I think we should say your last point and then I think we should move on.
it has no characteristics of the committee. I don't know who told you this, that there would be selection process for chairs and wait.
I'm not saying that. Worse. So what I'm explaining is, if it's a committee that's going to
It's not a committee.
Students
That's the
Association.
problem. That's the problem. It's not a committee. It's a body which will be created by a commission to review the student association. And that committee is being chaired by Team Burns, so the Team Burns would be more likely to select or at least propose a chair for it than anyone.
Is it something that is coming into existence by virtue of discussion and conversation in support of SA government?
Well, student government will be approving
Yes.
people for it, but not nominating, which is very important, because when we nominate, we propose a person in the first place. When you approve, you just choose where this particular person is fitting.
Gotcha. So your mechanism for holding us accountable is not choosing people who were elected by the rest of the student body, but leaving that choice up to someone, say, who is Dean Burns in this.
To the least, yes, leaving it to the least related to the student government body within the student association, which is currently the commission will do this.
So you believe that the accountability should not come from the elected leadership of the students, but from the administration that has already multiple times come in the way of students' association government's ability and attempts to make changes across campus.
So you're suggesting that the people there should be elected? That's correct. So the
I'm trying to understand how it'll be something that's supported by elected students, but have no one suggested by on the committee by the actual elected officials. So
well, that's a perfect point, and I have a confidence to say that the solution to this would be to change the existing text of the bill so that the officials to this commission are being elected. However, I think this is a valid, very good point, but I'll need to discuss it with.
All right, with that, I'd like to end the discussion on this. So this is a bill to change the bylaws, so we will need a motion to table. Yes, and then we will rediscuss this a week from now, if this is tabled. I suggest, like, is it made aware to me that you guys would like to go into a vote by roll call, straight up for the tabling, and for my interpretation, if you reject the tabling, then it sends the bill back to its drafters, as opposed to rejecting it entirely. So I would suggest that you table the motion, although we can go into a vote by roll call if you would like, but for this current motion, we do need a motion to table this motion. So would anyone have a motion? Someone needs a motion to table this motion. Motion to table. Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, so I guess let's just do it by show of hands. Who would like to go into a vote by unanimous consent to table it and talk about this next week? And who would like to go into the vote by roll call? Let's do unanimous consent. Raise your hand.
What are we voting on?
So this is the motion to table this motion. So if we go into the vote by roll call for this, it would send the bill back to drafters to be presented at a later time. If we go into a vote by unanimous consent, it would table this motion and it will be immediately brought back next week. So we have two options here.
So here's what I would say. I would like to have a vote to table it, but mostly to see what the senators' sympathy is towards this bill.
All right, I'm just gonna do, people have been just, there's two different opinions. I'm just gonna do a straw poll. Who would like to go into a vote by unanimous consent? Raise your hand.
Well, no, I think it's unfair dealing with place.
Okay, well, that's the majority, so we'll go into a vote by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent? Seeing none, the motion is tabled. Is there a motion? By the way, that means the motion will reappear automatically next week's Senate meeting. All right, is there a motion? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the resolution to approve the SA public relations profile and service communications in general by establishing an SA LinkedIn profile.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we go to discussion. To my knowledge, this was drafted by Senator Sorkin and Secretary O'Leary. So if you would like to talk about this, I'll turn the floor over to the two of you. Secretary O'Leary, you can.
So I guess I could introduce it really quick.
Okay, you can go first. Sorry.
20 seconds for sake of time. So we had there was an idea of having a LinkedIn account for our student government, and that's an idea that I was very, I really like. I was really in favor of this idea, so I wrote this resolution to establish this LinkedIn account as well as provide some more information of what this particular account should look like, at least from how I think it should look. So as a center, that's kind of my opinion. So, but what I would like to say is that establishing such thing as a LinkedIn account would be, it might be established by a resolution, but the same way as it can be established by resolution, it can be established by the executive branch, by the sole unilateral decision of the executive branch. However, despite the fact that that's something that executive branch can do themselves, I think that having a resolution formally establishing it would add a lot of legitimacy to having this LinkedIn account. So that's pretty much what the situation is, and with that,
Let's turn over to Secretary O'Leary. Whatever.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, so the goal of this new LinkedIn account would be for us to connect with alumni who had previously been involved in student government. I am emailing Anne Marie to figure out the name, so I made the account last night, it's still really like rough and everything, and I have to create a page for that account. So it's in the works, but basically I'm gonna try and get a list of alumni who are in SIS, so we can all like connect with them via LinkedIn. If you have any questions, let me know, it's still really new.
Okay, go to discussion, Senator Moore.
I have two questions. One, would this fall more under like, UK or on purpose, it's like publicity?
We were gonna do that joint, I started making it, but I'm definitely going to communicate with her, because she's the public relations, so yeah.
I guess it's a kind of follow-up question now. Did you get, just, I was gonna ask her, but she's not here at the moment. Did you get to like hear any of the opinions on this one?
Any what, sorry?
Any of the ones, opinions on it as well, just 'cause she's
Not yet, she was, away for like this, skiing and everything, she's on vacation or something, so I was going to talk to her about that this week.
Hey, Senator Trishina. Okay, is there any other questions? All right, we're going to a vote by roll call whenever the deputy speaker is ready. See how we're doing names.
Senator McCarthy. Senator Chin.
Yes.
Senator Petroyevich.
Yes.
Senator Hathaway. Senator Ola. Senator Moore.
Yes.
Senator Saudi. Senator Sorkin.
yes.
Senator Trusteema.
Yes.
Senator Tusima.
Yes.
Senator Wong.
Yes.
Senator Yu.
Yes.
11 yeses and 1 abstention, motion passes. Is there a motion?
Move to approve schools to establish a constitutional ad hoc committee.
Is there a second? Okay, question. From my understanding, this was drafted by Senator Petroyevich, so I'll turn it over to.
We'll try to keep this as short as possible, given the fact that we had a long discussion so far. So basically, the whole purpose of this is, of this committee, once we realized that there was mass resignation pretty recently, and once you start consulting, with other senators and ex-senators or people who are involved in SC government in general in the past, I think it's safe to say that the conclusion is that we need to do something about the issues raised during this event of mass resignations. Not just because it's an event of mass resignations, but because it really points to what are the flaws inside student government. Because these are some people who are really vocal, people who are really important to SA and to our campus, and they decided, fully to actually not be in the Senate anymore. So I think their concerns are something that needs to be heard and kind of acted on immediately, or at least as soon as possible. Given that reasoning, I think it's fair to say that the only way to solve all these problems, and there's not just one or two, for that reason is to establish a constitutional committee. In this case, adding ad hoc to the constitutional committee, simply because I think that the fact that it's ad hoc should eliminate many concerns, or at least alleviate many concerns that we all might have here. The purpose of this committee, number one, is to review the main governing document of SA government, basically its constitution. I think that the constitution is very important in terms of setting up the whole structure of our government, and should be at least, we should at least think to revise it after such an event. Secondly, this committee will also consult with several individuals in SA government, namely ex-senators, for example. And I think their input is very important. Some of them are here today, but some of them are also not here today. So I think that the more input that we get from ex-senators, the better we are. Yeah, any questions?
All right, so I just want to clarify really quickly, my interpretation and in consultation with the other heads of the branches and advisors, this will be a motion to change some of the bylaws, so this would need to be tabled as well. So we would do a motion to table this motion after the discussion period.
Point of order.
Senator Sorkin.
I mean, of course, I'm not a parliamentarian, and we greatly want to advise on the procedural things, but I was checking it earlier today because Matt actually reached out to me asking about the voting thresholds for this particular bill, and it says in the bylaws, you pull it out the section where it says that ad hoc committees require simple majority vote, and they don't make the changes to the bylaws. So I think I have it somewhere close to me because again I was pulling it up for earlier today. So yeah,
I mean, we can go into a vote by roll call, we can finish this up today. I do think this is a very important change and it would be worthy of tabling, simply because of the weight and the gravity of the motion, although you guys are free to overrule me with a 2/3 majority, so.
Oh, excuse me, just small thing, I just found it. It's bylaws Article 3, Section 1, subsection F, subsection A. It says, ad hoc committees shall be formed by a simple majority vote of the Senate through a motion or appropriate legislation.
Fair enough, so I guess I'll just do a quick straw poll of the senators, and if 2/3 overrule my interpretation, and we can go into a vote by roll call, so. How many would like to see this table? Okay, how many would like, how many would like to see this table? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my interpretation stands as it seems. But I think we're gonna go to tabling, yeah.
Have we had a discussion yet?
No, I'm just clarifying. But after the discussion is over, we need a motion to table. Okay, to my interpretation. If eight of you disagree, we can go into a vote by roll call after the discussion, but I believe that we should table this motion.
Okay, well, if that's something that most of the senators feel comfortable.
Yeah, I can ask again if you would like, how many? Yeah, after we discuss, there's still discussion left, I'm just clarifying. So if 8 of you guys think that we should do a vote by roll call, we can do that, otherwise we could table. So how many think we should go into a vote by roll call? All right, so I guess we're going to table it after the discussion. So any questions or comments for Senator Spitzer-Pavich? Now is the time. Senator Moore.
I guess one of my questions, like just looking at this, it looks like one of the main goals is to reduce bureaucracy. How do you do that by adding, to me, at least I interpret another committee as adding bureaucracy?
Do you yield the floor or?
Yeah, no, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's.
Just clarification, it's one directly asking something.
Okay, yeah, just formalities, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, the answer to this question, I guess, lies in the fact that we actually have to do something to reduce bureaucracy, and I think this is the only way we can go. I would like everything to be reduced without bureaucracy. I agree. This is one of the reasons why, this committee should be ad hoc, because the worst that can happen is results. So I think that should really at least address this to a certain enough extent that we can say, all right, let's go ahead with it. Anyway.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
I guess you also mentioned how this is a government question, so you can respond right after. You mentioned how there's like various issues, and I obviously, since I wasn't here last year, don't know the full extent of all of them exactly.
Sorry, can you just?
Oh, so sorry, since I wasn't on in XA last year, like I don't know the full extent, but you did mention there's various issues.
Yeah.
It's an ad hoc committee, but you do say there's like a lot of issues.
how like long, or how do you think you go about, or who and how would you go about determining when it is necessary to have this committee out, if there are so many issues, like trying to figure out what issues and when they're addressed, and who would be deciding that process and how would you feel about that?
So are you saying who is going to be, in the committee voting on that, or are you saying how are we going to go about and figure out what the issues are and then implement changes?
Yeah, I guess how would you choose what issues, when to address them, and how to say like, we're addressing it for this time?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So basically, in terms of how to address these issues, I think number one concern, or number one thing that we need to look at here is, what ex-senators have, as for cite as reasons for why they resigned. That's definitely one thing that I think is important. And again, even though we might have heard from some of them, some of them are here, some of them are also not. So I think that it's important to collect all these ideas and to talk about them and discuss them, what's the best way to go about this. I think that, it's not also just about ex-senators, obviously, implementing new ideas that other people have who just joined SA or who are not ex-senators, but are current senators, for example, but have been here during the past campaign. They should also, give it their input if they want. I think that's going to be very helpful. Hopefully that.
Senator Morley, President Cosby.
Right, again, much like the bill established through the Association Accountability Office, I think the idea is spot on. We definitely need certain changes within the Constitution to make it so that SA government is much more efficient, much quicker at doing things. But as Senator Wu just pointed out earlier, I agree with the analysis that this is just going to create further bureaucracy. What I believe in, however, is that if there are large-scale constitutional changes that senators across the spectrum believe are necessary and important at this point, you don't necessarily need to set up an ad hoc committee, but much like the way this bill and the two bills before this were written, people can literally get together, senators, work on the bill, the specific constitutional changes that they believe are essential for the betterment and the improvement of student association government, put them all in one bill and go from there, instead of having a specific committee that's set to dedicate time for these specific purposes. A lot of the same arguments that came for the bill to establish the Student Association Accountability Office might apply here as well, from the understaffing to the making sure who gets to be on the committee, who does not get to be on the committee. This is also a committee within the Student Association government, so it'll require people who are already representatives, if and when they'll be able to make time, if and when they'll be able to, or willing to even leave the commitments that they already have to be able to make time for this. So I think a lot of the same arguments sort of map onto this one as well. And beyond that, I genuinely do believe it's very much possible to have a bill of this sort, but one, to have specific changes within the Constitution without the existence of this ad hoc committee, primarily and succinctly because the existence of the committee inherently does what it wants to avoid doing, which is create further bureaucracy. Because bureaucracy is the creation of a work environment where there are certain hierarchies that inhibit the fast and efficient flow of work, and by having the hierarchies that it does, it inherently does that. So I don't see much purpose in establishing such a committee.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. So, I think that, as you started off, I feel that a great thing to point out is that, you mentioned that this committee would be dedicated specifically to solving this issue. I feel that that's something that at least convinces myself to be, honestly feel like we do really need a committee of people who are specifically going to do things that are related to solving all these issues, rather than sort of expecting people to come up on their own if they really want to, feel like, and things like that. Also, I think that the arguments that are pointed out about whether people have enough time and whether we are understaffed or not understaffed, I think that while we are all concerned about our staffing, and I think that's always a valid concern, I also think that we cannot just say people are not understaffed, people are not going to be understaffed. So I think that if I was presented with some data about that, I would definitely be convinced, but I didn't myself. I wasn't able to find data on this. So I think that, including the fact that it's ad hoc is simply going to alleviate this issue a lot. We can actually get to see, whether students have time, whether students really want to join this committee, and many other committees. I feel that they do, but again, it's like we don't have a lot of data here to point to that. So unfortunately, I think this is a gray area where you're just gonna have to decide on yourself. I feel that I'm convinced by the fact that we have issues that are pressing, and I feel that, given that there was a mass resignation, I think that things weren't really perfectly solved as we all probably planned them to be. I think that that's pressing enough for me to at least try to get these issues resolved as soon as possible with a committee dedicated to that purpose.
Thank you. So I think to respond to that, as someone who resigned last semester as well myself, I think one of the key issues that a lot of students faced was in fact the bureaucracy that exists, and the creation of committee on top of committee on top of committee creates an environment where bureaucracy has a greater opportunity to grow and develop and build instead of it being countered by having slightly more informal but efficient and quicker mechanisms to accomplish the same goals. This is like all my comments for both you and Boris are by no means to discourage anything that you guys have worked on, because I genuinely believe that I say government requires both constitutional changes and much more accountability, because those are issues that we struggled for as long as science existed. However, I do slightly disagree with the mechanisms that you propose, primarily because instead of removing the shackles of bureaucracy, such as having a committee, a chair, who dictates what specific move we're going to follow, what specific interpretations we're not going to follow, and then have to go through that entire slow procedure whereby the governance of that committee apparently takes up so much time, but there is not a lot more time left for people to work on the issues that they want to address. And so for those reasons, I still feel unconvinced, but here to be convinced otherwise.
Yeah, thanks for your input, Sadiq. That's really helpful, especially because you're next in.
We're gonna move on. We have someone in the gallery. Yeah, from Jerry Houston.
Hi. I think the reason my question largely is, what's the utility of making it a fixture? Yeah. What's the utility of making it a set fixture of the Constitution when it seems that the ad hoc committee, like part of its utility is a fixture of the Constitution? I don't understand why we would need to reify it permanently if it seems the advantage of the ad hoc committee is the fact that it can introduce itself for the time it's necessary, for the bureaucratic purposes it serves, and then go away after the time is done. So I suppose that's sort of my question, whether it needs to be a fixed feature.
Are you asking why isn't it fixed today?
Essentially, why it sounds like the constitutional ad hoc committee is something that would be a permanent fixture of the governance structure, not something that's introduced and then disappears after it serves its purpose for that fixed term that is relevant. Do you understand that? Because that seems like it might solve the immediate problem. There might be a particular issue of that group of senators, but it wouldn't be a problem that would be relevant in future years. And so the fact that it does disappear solves the bureaucratic problem, while also doing precisely what you want, which is get a focus group afterwards to find out what went wrong. And I do.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so in terms of the ad hoc component, I think that, obviously, as the Constitution, we think that the Constitution needs revision, it's going to be revised continuously, but again, this is not the sole purpose of the committee to just review the Constitution. I think that's basically what's important in this question. If that answers. Or maybe I misunderstood.
I didn't think that's precisely what I meant, but I guess the idea is.
Yeah, I guess I don't really understand.
Yeah, and I might be misunderstanding, so I do have to be clarified that way. I do for others to.
I think what you're proposing is an ad hoc committee. So this wouldn't be a permanent, it would go away, although you didn't specify what period of time.
Oh, you mean, how long is that committee going to be?
Is that your question?
It was mostly just it's clarified for me, actually, on my never mind.
Okay, let's keep going. We have 3 on the speakers list, 4 on the speakers list. So Justice Sen.
My question is purely clarification. The bill makes reference to a variety of people who will be voting members of the committee, but the PPMs say senators and legislative advisors. I was wondering if you could clarify that. Sorry, I can
clarify exactly.
So the bill makes reference to a variety of people being voting members, like me, Sabi, Matt, and the PPMs say it'll be senators and legislative advisors. Who's going to be part of the committee?
Who's going to be part of the committee?
Yeah.
Well, exactly as you said. So the voting members of the committee include the people, basically, so senators as well, but if deemed necessary, they're going to be LAs as well. And as it says, essay president, chief justice, et cetera, right? Yeah,
I would like to make a clarifying point, so this is reminding me of this, so per documents, each committee would need 2 senators, and not a single senator has told me they would like to serve on multiple committees, so I would have to reassign 2 senators to serve on this committee. I just wanted to put that out there. To answer your question, we can go down the speakers list to Senator Hathaway.
So my question was, how is this different from like the election and rules committee, ad hoc committee that existed last year? All does the elections and rules committee have to do with, continuously updating the constitution and asking, like senators what the problems are, why they left the student association government? I guess that's a question that I'm asking. How do I write that?
Can you repeat that a little louder?
Well, yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, the question is, how is this different from the committee that you just mentioned, right? Is that the question? Yeah.
Are you talking about elections and rules or the elections violations?
The ad hoc
The
committee.
ad hoc committee, anything for ENR that Typhoon was on last year, elections and rules.
How does it differ from elections and rules? Well, yeah, I guess, I don't know whether elections and rules constantly asks, like senators as to why they left, but I think that that's a major component of all this. I don't know, I think Fred wants to talk about something, but, I'm not sure, Fred, you have some input that's interesting?
The people was confused. No, okay, I just want to just clarify like the differences between the Elections and Rules Committee and the Constitutional Ad hoc Committee we're creating. Elections and Rules Committee is let's take it this way, it's a bigger scope of things that we're doing. We're not only reviewing the Constitution, we're also reviewing all the essay bylaws, like certain PPMs, etc. Right? It's a bigger scope. Constitutional Ad hoc Committee, the difference is that it's a smaller scope. It's only focused on the Constitution. To finish the stuff that Typhoon and the committee did not finish last year due to these situations that happened in the Senate. So the main, from my understanding, the Constitutional Ad hoc Committee is solely focused on revising and updating the existing Constitution. It is not going to review the bylaws or the PPMs as the Elections and Rules Committee usually do. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you for the input, and also just in addition, so basically, as you said, yes, it's just, this is also focused on working with ex-senators as well, which, I really think is kind of important.
Yes, in some, it's a smaller scope comparing to the elections. It's not the exact same thing. We can say it is a children of the Elections and Rules Committee. And the reason why we need it is because we really had a lot of stuff that we didn't finish on Elections and Rules Committee last year. So, and we really wish to work on this year continuously because there's really a lot of stuff that needs to be updated in the Constitution if you have read it before.
I'll get to you in a. Does that answer your question?
There's not that much difference. The only difference is that it's a little smaller than what it was previously.
So funny. Sorry. I know Senator Short's on the speakers list, so. Senator Moore, you're next.
I guess this is like part question, part like possible suggestion. Kind of like what Steve mentioned is like, I think I appreciate bringing up the issue of wanting to have more feedback from class senators. I think that is invaluable. That would hopefully help us avoid having future problems. But wouldn't it possibly be better to start from a habit of like not increasing bureaucracy and making these less formal? Because this is something like, especially with past senators, you have more experience, you have more connections to people. I think if you did it in a less formal way, where people who are interested in sort of reaching out to people that you know, or that you resign, then you can have less bureaucracy, you can still interact with people, having a speaker, would eliminate the issue of needing 2 more senators and pulling away from other Senate positions. And I think that would maybe address the issues that we have and want to address, but reducing the burden on like stretching Senate even more thin with people. And I mean, again, starting a habit of like not addressing bureaucracy, but addressing it in like, I think this could set a really good habit of addressing things with like bills and like community as opposed to always needing a committee to solve them. That's like kind of question, like if that would be better, or partially suggestion, I guess, of like how to address the issues but in a different way.
Yeah, thank you for the question slash suggestion. Yeah, so just to touch on that, I feel that that's definitely something that we should think about. However, I also really don't want to introduce too much bureaucracy because I feel that too much bureaucracy is limiting, but some order is also needed. And given the fact that, I feel that enough time has passed, to actually test whether, having no committee will help or solve issues. I feel like the issues weren't solved, so maybe we should try a different route. That was also another kind of approach, just so you can see how the way of thinking functions. So why would you form a committee and not just really that system, which is kind of sort of supposed to work and we did fix some issues, but problems are still here. At least that's how I feel.
I have a quick follow-up with this. I know you said that you don't have engaged the ideas on it, but do you have any idea of what senators would possibly be interested or able to be part of it? Because I know we have a large majority of us that are new this year, which would be kind of hard for us. I mean, we can still reach out to people, but it'd be hard to know who to reach out to exactly. We have people who already like have more, I think, more experience, they're already involved in higher positions, but we have a lot of freshmen who be coming in having no idea what to do. So do you have any suggestions or any idea of who would be on this thing from the senator?
You mean like whether new senators can be on this committee?
Like which senators, like looking at what we have right now, we need 2 senators to be on the committee. Do you have any idea who would be on it? Just because the way I see it is like, it's hard to find people who have those connections because we have a lot of new people and then we have incoming first years who have no idea what happened on this.
Yeah, in terms of the connections, there's not just senators on the committee, and I feel like that everybody who is not a senator who's going to be a voting member of the committee does have, at least from what I see, should have a lot of connections to ex-senators as well, or not. So I feel
Do you have a
that.
list of people you have that are interested then? If you're saying that, do you have a list of people who are interested then?
Do I have a list of people who are already interested to be on the committee?
Yeah, so you were phrasing it sounded like you had an idea of who.
Well, no, I don't know which one of you exactly or new senators would want to be on the committee. I didn't ask.
Or sorry, I'll clarify. You said, like senators, the senators that joined might not know, but the people who would be on the committee additionally would have an idea of connections. Do you have an idea of who would possibly wanting to be on that committee already?
Who would want to be on the committee? I mean, so another thing is, let it be recommended that the committee seeks for advice and recommendations from the ACJC Chief Justice, SA President, Speaker, Parliamentarian. I think that these are the people, and you guys can confirm whether you have senators or senators.
I just wanted to say, we're down to 9 senators. We need 8 platforms. I understand that this meeting is not time. You guys have commitments. You have one more person on the speakers list, so I'd like to get to Senator Sorkin and then I can put up.
Yeah, I have a question and then just a few words about this community. So first, so the question is pretty short. So I was just wondering how many ad hoc committees do we currently have?
My knowledge, 0. To my knowledge, the only one I guess is the election violations committee. But other
But
than that,
among the ad hoc committees,
I don't think we have
really have any, right? Well, okay, yeah, that's just a general question. Okay, so yeah, and the thing that I wanted to say is that I mean the problems that Senator Sidich was just talking about. I mean, I'm familiar with some of them because honestly, he was reaching out on drafting this book, he was reaching out to me for feedback. And I should say that I don't think it is possible for any person or group of people to actually even just consider all the proposals, ideas for change that were brought during last year. Senator Sadi was suggesting to make some senators not elected but appointed. Current chief of staff Luke was thinking of some justices of the council to be elected instead of appointed. I myself had an idea of questioning up, where the boundaries of our independence, right? Because we have, as we call them, WCSA advisors, but hey, I mean, it's clear that they're not just advisors. Some of us are looking at them, maybe not of us, but some people generally look at them as some idols or some gods, which is very unhealthy and toxic, in my opinion. And there are many other, like, ex-parliamentarian Sarkin was questioning the definition of Western legislative party, etc., etc., etc. I think that I kind of get what the Gregor is trying to address right now. We're proposing to form this committee, but the point I'm making is like this idea that some group of students or anyone, or as a bit, as President Kazimir suggested earlier today, for one bill and put all the changes there, right? That's something you suggested. That wouldn't be feasible because the amount of possible ideas, changes to the student government is so huge and it originates from such diverse and different backgrounds that I don't think that there would be, like, it would be possible to address it by one person or a group of students, like a group of students and voluntarily came together. So I definitely think that there should be some way how to approach these ideas, because some of those ideas were definitely worth of consideration. And I mean, to me as a senator, this would be very unfortunate if those ideas just die out. It's
In the interest of time, I'm just gonna move on to President Cosme and then get a response.
So at the end of the day, you're all senators elected by your constituents, or students, part of a very diverse student body, and you are meant to represent their best interests. They vote for you based off of promises and ideas that you share with them, and the confidence that they have in your ability to bring up ideas and implement them at this stage. To suggest that the senators present here, or the ones that will be within the next couple of weeks, do not fully represent, which they in practice can never, of course, but at least theoretically, the fact that there's the idea that they can represent the diversity of thought that exists across campus is slightly unfair to the senator position itself, because the purpose is, as a senator, to not only present new ideas and changes that you can implement within the student body and the administrative side, but also to gather all of the information from your constituents that you incorporate into your day-to-day life, especially as an SA government official. So the responsibility of gathering the information that you would want edited and or changed within the SA Constitution, number one, is something that lies at a personal individual level for each senator present. So if Sevilla comes to me tomorrow and says, I don't know what my constituents want, that would be in fact a failure for every senator. So to go around and understand what your constituents want is your primary goal, and then to enact that, right? By virtue of establishing a committee that changes specifically only the legislation of the Student Association government, instead of focusing on the issues that students consistently are bringing up. For instance, right now, there are issues with dining, there are issues with Merck being on pause, and a gazillion other issues that we could bring up with students from different parts of the world who are struggling with specific things that potentially fall under specific senators, specific committees, etc., right? To suggest that instead of spending the limited amount of time that you can have as a student leader, mind you, student then leader, on changing specifically only the Constitution, and that too through a bureaucratic mechanism where you meet as a committee once a week or twice a week or however many times a week, I believe is simply taking away time to do a lot of really good work, especially to address issues that students face. I agree that a lot of these structural changes, infrastructural changes to SA government are essential within the next few years. However, this specific year is the year we're coming back out of a pandemic. We're dealing with a gazillion issues that have come up because so many of us have not socialized in so long, have not had food at the dining center for so long, have not had to sit on a table or wait in line for 45 minutes to get a single burger. I think those are the pressing matters, and the dining is something that's been on the top of everyone's mind, so I'm bringing it up, but there are multiple other issues within the same month. I think those issues require much more attention for this academic year, or at least this semester, as we try to reintegrate and get back into regular year, as opposed to spending the valuable time and valuable input that you can get from your constituents, which will most likely, if I'm not wrong, be about their day-to-day life issues as opposed to the Constitution of SA, because of which I believe it's essential, again, to recognize that the manpower and the time we spend on just forming, setting up, and even now discussing this committee is slightly unnecessary given this specific time of the year. I genuinely believe that having more accountability and a committee that deals with constitutional issues is important. I do think there is a better way to deal with that. One of you could raise a motion to have a moderated class for like 45 minutes to have a thorough discussion on specific issues that senators want to bring up, or much longer, whatever you deem fit, because you guys are senators and it's your voice at the end of the day. You could also choose to have an unmoderated class for 2 hours, so you basically have the entirety of Senate to sit around and have open and direct conversations without any supervision from that whatsoever, and make sure that you're able to address specific issues, especially constitutional ones that you want to deal with. But to take away so much time on a weekly basis and within Senate, at least especially to date, I think is a little unfair to our constituents, because I genuinely believe there are issues that are much more pressing, that would require much more attention. Again, no shade whatsoever, but I think I have a slight disagreement in terms of A, the priorities that we should have right now, especially considering the context of how we're just coming out of the pandemic, haven't fully yet, we're back to being masked again. And also, what mechanisms we could utilize to do the same job, but quicker. That's why I recommended the moderated caucuses or the unmoderated caucuses. A variety of other ways to do this before we go.
Just in the time, it's about time that 2 senators actually do need to leave very soon, and we will be under quorum, so I would urge you guys to maybe wrap up this discussion and.
I yield to.
So I'm just saying, once we go down to 7 senators, we have to end the meeting. So we.
I yield to Senator Sorg.
Yeah, thank you, President Kazmi, and I want actually, I left him dying, but yeah, I want to thank President Kazmi for bringing this very important point about us following the needs of our constituents. I think this is very important, and this is something that I'm very grateful for for doing it. And I want to say, I don't know about other senators, of course, but my main global part of my campaigning, which is the set of promises I was making to my constituents, was to change the student government. I changed the student government. I don't know exactly, well, I assume I know, but I don't know exactly what Gregor's plans for the Senate are, but
I will tell you your response, and maybe.
I'm just saying that I think that having this committee would make a lot of sense. And the only thing I don't agree with President Kazmi, I agree with all except with one thing, which is these are the needs. And if they were not the needs, I guess the students wouldn't vote for me, for example, because I had 4 points in my campaigning. I don't want to go through all of them for the sake of time, but all 4 of them can be summarized as changing the very structure of the student government, to make it less bureaucratic, to make it more efficient, and to improve it generally. And I think that what Senator Tsvetovic is currently proposing definitely addresses this. Yes, it forms a committee, but it forms a committee which is ad hoc, which means that it will automatically dissolve by the end of this academic term, academic year, while at the same time it may be very helpful with actually all those promises that we're all making. Some of us were making about structural changes to student government. Some of those plans may actually actually be brought to life through this.
We're gonna go to Senator Tsvetovic.
Yes, just to keep it quick, basically, what I'm going off of here is so far, I personally am not satisfied with how we have handled things in terms of how many issues we've solved. Yes, I respect that we've all worked on this a lot, but I think that we need to work on it harder, whatever that means for every single one of you. And I think that if we just keep on going and doing what we're doing right now, I'm not just that we will actually solve these issues, which is why I propose. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. At the end of the discussion, I'm just a reminder, we decided that this will be needed to be tabled, so we need a motion to table. Is there a motion? Okay, I'm just gonna hear Senator Tusimi, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Senator Trishina, we're gonna do a vote by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent on tabling this motion? Seeing none, the motion is tabled and will be reintroduced next week. Mr. Seconding, our unanimous consent, seeing none, we're adjourned. I'll see you guys here Monday at 8 p.m.
Oh, that was the long meeting for Oh, I don't Yeah, we have done. And again, I genuinely
You're not attacking me first.
I absolutely. No, I never.
Are you doing this like? And the stream.
Oh, yeah, that's, you need to. But yes, Boris, text me and let's set up lunch.
Tomorrow.
I was just gonna ask Senator.
Yeah.
Text me, because I haven't checked my schedule for tomorrow, and I think it's set up.
Not sure. You want to play right now?
Except for people overlooking the, but okay.